Yo, what's happening, guys? It's GM Cody, and welcome back to another video. It has been a little while. It's been a little while since I've done a video. The past month or so has been quite busy on my end, and I have not had time to do videos, nor have I really felt like it, to be honest. But things have changed a little bit. I'm going to get back to making some videos here, and especially was motivated because a few weeks ago, a fan reached out to me. Well, they claim to be fans anyway, so I think they are. Seem to be sincere. And asked me if I would take a look at their book that they just published. And I said, of course, maybe I would be interested, and they kind of gave me the lowdown on what the book was about and everything, and I could definitely tell that it was right up my alley, and I was definitely interested. So they said, hey, we'll send you the book, physical book, and we'll send you a PDF, and, would be interested in you doing a review for us. So I said, absolutely, send me the book. Now check it out. So last week, I received the book in the mail, the hardback copy of this, The Painted Wastelands. This is, the best way I could describe it is a psychedelic, awesome hexcrawl for OSR games. It is specifically designed for old school essentials, but they do have a conversion system on their website for Dungeon Crawl Classics, and I think really you could probably use it for any kind of D&D type game. I don't see any reason why you would have trouble adapting this to any OSR type game, any kind of D&D style game. If you just wanted to play AD&D First Edition, if you wanted to use whatever Osric or even Shadow Dark probably, or Morkborg or anything, I think this would work just fine with that. So yeah, I have to say, I got this book in last week, and I didn't really quite know what to expect, and I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it would be cool, but this is absolutely awesome, and I'm very, very glad that Chris has reached out to me. And I just want to say before we get started, thank you very much, Tim and Chris, for reaching out to me to look at this book. I definitely love it. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why. Now, usually when I do a book like this, I do a really extensive deep dive on the book, and we literally go like page by page. I don't really want to do that so much with this book, and the reason is because this is a hex crawl. I feel like I'd be spoiling this for a lot of people if you were to play it, to play through it. So, and also, I'm actually considering running this on the channel because I think it's that cool. And for those reasons, I don't want to spoil everything, but I will talk about, I'm going to talk about the book. We're going to look at it a little bit, but I'm not going to go extensively through the whole book like I usually would with a rule book or a supplement or anything, because this is such a different kind of beast. I don't really want to spoil the fun for people that are actually interested in buying this and playing through it, or people that may potentially be playing in the game or watching the game here on my channel at some point. So, but we're going to be talking about it. So, The Painted Wastelands, essentially what it is, like I said, it's a psychedelic science fantasy hex crawl adventure. Okay, campaign, if you will. Actually, it's kind of a it's an adventure. It's a hex crawl. If you don't know what a hex crawl is, it basically comes from the old Judges Guild Adventures of the Wilderlands stuff that they did in the late 70s. And essentially what it is you have a hex map, and each of those hexes already has pre-planned encounters on each hex that you travel to. So that's basically what it is. And there's been many different kinds of hex crawls based on this idea that Judges Guild, I think, originally put forth, almost 50 years ago at this point. And especially with the OSR movement in the past, almost 20, 15 years, whatever, a lot of people have made have brought the hex crawl back, if you will, which is really cool. And there has been some really cool ones. I gotta say, this is probably one of my favorite ones I've seen in a while, if not my favorite one, actually. It's really, really interesting, really original, and it has a lot of cool psychedelic stuff, and we're gonna dive into it. So without further ado, let's dive into this. So here we go. We are looking at the PDF. for the Painted Wastelands. Right off the bat, I got to say, I love the artwork here. It's obviously, I think, Chris, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry if I'm wrong, or it might be Tim. Let's see, cover by Tim. Tim Malloy is the artist here, and Chris is the writer. And the art is definitely inspired by Mobius, for sure, but it definitely has its own distinct style. It's not just a rip-off of Mobius, but heavily inspired by that. And the whole book is inspired by Mobius and Jodorowsky, and there's all kinds of references in here to Mad Max and Philip K. Dick, and Edgar Rice Burroughs, and even Star Wars to a lesser extent. There's all kinds of little references in here. A lot of stuff tying into 70s, that kind of like 70s psychedelic heavy metal vibe, if you will. And that's really what this is really inspired by. I would say, the biggest inspirations I see here are Mobius and Jodorowsky, for sure, especially in the art. And the art is amazing, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's either been nominated or has won an award for the art, which it definitely deserves. And here we have a really cool splash page of the Painted Wastelands, and we start getting into the book with a foreword and whatnot, and then it jumps right into the adventure. Now, it doesn't spend a lot of time setting you up and describing what the Painted Wastelands are, which I kind of really like. It's not like a lot of campaign settings, which I guess you could call this a campaign setting to some degree. It doesn't spend a lot of time going through all the nitty-gritty of what this world's all about. You kind of discover the world as you're running and playing it, and it leaves a lot of the deeper mysteries up to your imagination, a lot of the details up to your imagination, and the player's imagination as well, which I really like. And really what this world is, it's kind of a world of dreams and nightmares. It's a realm, it's almost like another realm of reality that doesn't quite really exist in our reality. People die and go there. It's almost like a purgatory place that souls get trapped in, and some people just get teleported there, and some people actually, or some beings, I shouldn't say just people, some beings actually just exist there. And it's also a place that's pretty weird, right? It's very weird. Like, you have these flying fish and talking cats and all kinds of strange beings. You have things that don't really make sense with the medieval fantasy technology. It really doesn't, it's very gonzo, right? It is a very gonzo psychedelic place, and I think they did a good job here throughout portraying all this gonzo psychedelia. So right off the bat, it doesn't spend a lot of time describing this place. There is a little bit of information describing it, and the Painted Wastelands is just one small area in this big area. So you could, it kind of gives you some idea about what the other areas or realms are in this reality, if you will, and you can create your own outside of the Painted Wastelands if you finish the Painted Wastelands, and maybe in the future they'll expand out. But one thing it does set up, which I really liked, is it gives you some ideas for metaplots for the DM if you wanted a metaplot for your Hexcrawl. And that's one complaint I hear a lot of people say about Hexcrawls, is a lot of times they don't have a metaplot, right? It's just, the players are literally roaming around kind of aimlessly, and then adventures are created organically, which I have no problem with. I like that sandbox mentality. But they do give you some metaplots here to kind of give your players a goal being in this strange place, which I like. And it gives about 3 or 4 here. It gives 4 here, basically. It also has a random table here about how did your character get to the Painted Wastelands. And you roll a D10 here, and you look, and like there's one here, you drunk a fungal wine with a stranger in the tavern last night. It's all blur, but now you find yourself here in the Painted Wastelands. An enemy sorcerer cursed you. Now you're stranded in the outer dreamlands with no way back. How long have you been here? It seems like you've been wandering for 1d8 weeks. Like this one, you died. Unfortunately, your soul got a little lost along the way in the afterlife and has found itself in the Painted Wastelands. You don't feel dead and seem uninjured. Even so, you distinctly remember setting off that trap. So these are just to give your players ideas about why they're there. They might be locals that have existed there for some time or forever. or they might have died and gone there, etc., etc. They might have smoked some psychedelic substance and ended up there, maybe cursed to be there. But this gives you, the players, a random way to come up with that if they don't come up with it themselves, which I appreciate. Then we get into the Dream Tongue, and what this is the language of the Painted Wastelands. The various denizens of the lower ethereal speak Dream Tongue, also known as the language of the dead by certain gutter wizards. It is complex language based on telepathic thoughts and metaphors. And basically it's the language that the people of the Painted Wastelands use to communicate. And as your character levels up, they become more enlightened to the Dreamlands, and they become more enlightened to how the natives speak here. And so that's kind of how that works. Unless you're local, I think there are certain character classes and stuff that are more adept at it. Wandering in the Wastelands, it's very difficult to wander in the Wastelands when it doesn't say how far like a hex is in the book. And I think that's on purpose, because it's kind of like Ravenloft, right? Where it's kind of like distorted and things are weird, and time and distances are a little distorted, right? So when you go from hex to hex, you have to have a navigator, and they roll a 1d20 plus their intelligence modifier, plus other modifiers depending on the character's level, use of a map, directions, servitor, if you smoke some ectoplasm, emboldened by some sweet mushrooms, perform a ritual, or maybe have a jet bike. You get some modifiers based on all those things. And you roll d20, add your intelligence modifier, and consult this chart to see if you actually make your way to where you were going on the map. And of course, the players will only know their starting location, and they will actually be mapping along the way as they go, like in most hex crawls do. Here we have a strange encounters table, and if there is a strange encounter while they're traveling, the game master will roll in here 1d20, and you have all kinds of cool stuff like the Dreamer. A beautiful pink-haired dreamer reads a book while lounging in a beanbag chair. She gives directions to the pastel house and the sorcerer's marketplace. If attacked, she disappears in a puff of scintillating smoke. You have some other cool ones like the Stinky Gutter Wizard, or the Bagpiper, or the Apocalyptic Crier, the Noranaut, or the Void Cult, or the Pillar Saint, or the Cactus Shaman. There's quite a variety here of strange, psychedelic encounters, strange encounters, if you will, for your players to encounter if things happen while they're traveling, or the game master might just decide that they encounter something, and this will give him some ideas. Here's a map of the Painted Wastelands. Obviously, you start here, and I don't want to dwell on this too long, but there's some very evocative places here, and we're not going to go through all these places because, again, I don't want to spoil it for people, but there's some really cool stuff here. It's just evocative to look at. The art, again, is really cool, and very evocative just with the titles of all the different hexes, like the Raiders of the Painted Wastelands, Sky Ghouls, Oniri Tribe, Dungeon on the Edge of Eternity, Tower of the Diseased One, Floating Garden, The Hive, Cargo Cult, and all the little depictions on each of the hexes is really cool and really get your imagination going as to what that's going to be. Of course, the players aren't going to see this stuff until they travel into a hex, and then they'll discover what's in there. But it's a really cool map, nonetheless. I really dig it, and really fits with the whole theme here that we're presenting of the Painted Wastelands. Sleep. You have to sleep after a day's travel, and then you have to roll. You have to make a Constitution check to have a good sleep. If you do have good sleep, you have sweet dreams and you heal and all that. If you don't, you may have a nightmare. And nightmares are bad here in the dreaming world, the Painted Wastelands, because this is a world of death and dreaming and such. And nightmares can come true. And those can be like your teeth fall out, or you're running late, or you lost your weapon, or you get sick, or doom, or chased, or a monster. And there's also random monsters that can come out while you're sleeping, and these are really interesting. All the creatures in this world are interesting. You have Shadow Entity, the Black Horse, Astral Leeches, a Sleep Paralysis Hag, Cat Stealing Breath, or a Night Strangler. So all cool stuff. And part 2 kind of introduces, gives you a short introduction to the Painted Wastelands. Like I said, it doesn't spend a whole lot of time here detailing every little thing about it, which I really like. It just gives you enough information for the game master to work with and then work off of, right? Which is exactly what I want in a setting. I don't want to be overloaded with too much information. I just need just enough to get going. And then I'll come up with stuff through the natural course of play, of course. So it goes through the cosmology, the different areas surrounding the Painted Wastelands, elsewhere in the Dreamlands, and the different factions in the Painted Wastelands. Like you have the Sect of the Bleeding Eye and the Void Cult, and the Oniri tribes people, and lesser factions like the Crypto Botanist and the Fraternal Order of Gutter Wizards. And all these names are really awesome, right? Very evocative and get your imagination going. So I like all the namings of all the different factions and creatures and stuff. Then we get into smoking ectoplasm, which is its own thing. So ecto is the currency in this world, which, if you've seen Ghostbusters, you know what ectoplasm is, an ecto. And basically that's the substances left behind from souls and spirits, I guess. And it's not only the currency here, people smoke it and ingest it to have hallucinogenic effects, but it also has beneficial effects. It also has grotesque side effects. And you also get experience points for spending ecto as well as smoking it, which is very, this game is very psychedelic and stoner, and I love it. And so they have this whole section here about what happens if you smoke ecto and all the different types of ecto they have, like tobacco, water pipe, huffing, and cigarettes, and their grotesque effects, which some of these are not quite good. Then it goes into the monetary consumption of, the ecto dollar, if you will, and using ecto as XP, as we just talked about. And then we have a really cool trinket chart. Of course, I like trinket charts, and they have two of them here. Mostly worthless and not so worthless trinkets. If your players are looting the body and you need something to give them other than a couple weapons and some armor, whatever, maybe some ectos, you can roll on this chart and come up with some stuff. And then we get into the actual campaign, right? The actual adventure, the Hexcrawl. I don't really want to go through this completely, but we will talk about like the first character here. The starting area is you meet this painted skull. And the painted skull does not have a name. And he's being harassed by a giant albino bat demon that your players are obviously going to hopefully rescue the skull. And if they do, the skull will join up with them. And as you're going through the adventure, there is the skull's comments or answers to questions if the players ask the painted skull about different areas that they travel to. This is the stuff that the skull will tell them. So it's featured all throughout the different locations here, what the painted skull has to say. Obviously, this is very inspired by a certain Planescape game, I think. That's what it seems like to me. And there's a lot of references and homages like that, and I really like it. I like that kind of stuff. And then we get into the weirdness of this thing. And I'm not going to read all this stuff or whatever, but I'm going to skim through here just to give you guys a taste. Here's an area where they meet the tribes people, which seem really cool. These are obviously like Fremen kind of people. You have some dungeons in here, of course. There's around, I think I counted around 5 dungeons. They're not huge. They're all about this size, scattered throughout the wastelands. So there's plenty of dungeons to explore, plenty of things to encounter. Here's a whole thing about like a band playing in a bar in the dungeon, and there's psychedelic mushrooms down there you can take, and the rules on that. Which, it has a lot of these stoner psychedelic themes, which is really cool. And the art is really awesome. And I'll just skim through some of this stuff and see if I see anything interesting. I don't want to ruin too much of this for you guys. I think it's, if you're really interested, you need to go read it yourself. But if again, I don't want to spoil too much, because you're obviously going to want, if you wanted to play in this, you don't want to be spoiled by it. But the art is really cool. The locations are really cool, really interesting, really strange. There's some really strange, really weird, off the wall gonzo kind of stuff here, as you can see, like that. That really, really encompasses all kinds of themes and inspirations from all kinds of cool stuff, like we were talking about with Mobius and the Inkle and Jodorowsky and Frank Herbert and Heavy Metal Magazine and all this stuff. It has, if you like all that stuff, it's all in here. It's all sprinkled in there really well and really cool with some original ideas too. I'm not saying that they just took everything. There are some really cool original ideas in here too, but I'm just saying that's what this is inspired by. You can definitely tell they did a really good job, and it's really strange and really weird and really cool. It's definitely got that very dreamy psychedelic quality to it that I know very well and love very well, and you can just get an idea just by looking at the art about what these places are all about. Like, here's another dungeon. Look at these dungeon maps. This is awesome. This is really good stuff. And I believe Tim did all the art in this book, which is really cool. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, or Chris. But I believe Tim did all the art in this book, which is very admirable because it's very bright and colorful. It's very detailed. It's very awesome art. And it obviously took him a lot of time just to do the art for all this. It's a beautiful book. It's just beautiful to look at. I've been looking at it all week. I've read this thing cover to cover already. It's very interesting, very cool. So we're going to skim through this a little bit more. This is one of my favorite pieces right here. This musician you meet out in the Wastelands, and he'll play you different songs that have different effects. It's really awesome. You meet this guy, the wrinkled sorcerer, smoking his long pipe here, and he'll do different things. The bleeding preacher you'll meet. This is really cool. Very Star Trek inspired, actually. These inquisitors are scattered across the world, hunting you down. This floating garden is really neat. You got all kinds of weird creatures and monsters to fight and explore. And then the Sorcerer's Marketplace, which is kind of like, I would say, is probably the hub, your main city in the Wastelands. I think there's a couple different settlements, but this is like the main one. And this is where you're going to buy stuff and trade stuff and hire hirelings and meet with people and get quests and have all that kind of stuff you would like in any other typical D&D game, right? Like, this is kind of your main hub place, and it's really cool. There's a lot of information here. One thing about the Painted Wastelands is people trade in like merchandise. Like, so there's comic books and vinyl records and trading cards and t-shirts and stuff, and magazines and things scattered all through the world for some reason, which I think is really cool. And then but that's like one of the biggest forms of bartering and commerce in the Painted Wastelands is all this merchandise. That's really what people want, more than ectos almost, which I think is a really cool thing to throw in there. It's just an interesting thing that I really like. It's an homage to people like me, and I'm sure many of you, like collectors. We all collect this stuff, and we almost, it's kind of like a nod to the collector culture, right? Which I think is cool. Some interesting merchants here and what they have and what they do. Some strange encounters, of course, while you're here. The bar, with the main bar, you gotta have like a bar or whatever, and this is the Pastel House. Obviously very inspired by like the Star Wars cantina kind of thing. There's also like these TV shows that go on through like the Dream Ether or something, and there's all these different shows that everybody like watches and stuff, which is really strange. There's a capsule machine out in the middle of nowhere, and you can put money in it, ectos, and get things out of it. You have different cults and different factions. Here's another, dungeon, the Whale Temple, which looks really cool again, like, and has a giant well at the bottom of it, apparently. A giant laughing spider here. The Hive. And, so that kind of gives you an idea, hopefully, of all the kind of different, a little bit of taste of what you're going to encounter in this strange, wonderful, and beautiful world. Next up, you have different, you basically have like a bestiary back here, a monster manual of all the different creatures that you would encounter in the Painted Wastelands. And nothing's to say that you can't use traditional D&D type monsters in here as well, obviously. And there's a whole host of really cool, strange things back here you can use, and most of these are introduced already as you're traveling through the Painted Wastelands. So there's a lot of cool things there. Different tomes of unspeakable knowledge, and it's all these different like magical tomes and weird tomes that do different things and can grant you different abilities. And some of them have bad things that can happen to you if you read them. And there's a random encounter, the Mandrill Librarian, who's looking for these tomes. And your players might encounter him, and he might charge you for a late library book if you're, caught with one of these tomes. And he's been tracking you down to get it back to the library, which is cool and weird. Different weird magic items like the Petrified Gecko and Tablet Scroll, the Eon Dwellers, and Hand of St. Florentine the Dismayed, and stuff like that. The Deck of Strange Things is a different twist in this game on the Deck of Many Things, of course. This one is very cool, very interesting twist on the Deck of Many Things. And if I remember right, I don't know if they have all the cards, but they do have some printed cards that you can get. They actually sent me one, which I have somewhere over there, which is really, really cool. If they don't already have all these cards printed, I would love to have them. And of course, this works a lot like the Deck of Many Things. It's just even more strange and weird than the Deck of Many Things. And as you go through the game, you might get to draw from the Deck of Strange Things, which is really cool. Here we have, this is one of the cards, the Mutant, and it actually, mutates you into a hideous, it gives you a strange mutant gift, right? Which is really cool. Some character classes. There are 2 additional character classes in the Painted Wastelands. You have the Cat, which I'm a little indifferent about, but it's cool nonetheless. You can actually play like a talking sentient cat, and they do have a human, a pet human that follows them around. And they're a lot like a thief, pretty much, except they can't use equipment, obviously, because they don't have any hands. But they can wear armor, and they get a defensive bonus when attacked by larger opponents. And they have thief skills, much like a thief. And they get a bonus to traveling around the Painted Wastelands. And here's the basic kind of requirements and whatnot, or whatever stat block, if you will, of the cat. And I love the art here. A little indifferent about it, but it's kind of cool. I think that some people would be really jazzed about this character class. Me particularly, not so much. But I would definitely let somebody play it in this game. In this game, if I was to run this, it'd be pretty much any character class, whatever goes. Let's do it, because it's just so strange and out there. And then you also have the, I hope I pronounce this right, a Neuromancer, which is a wizard that uses an arcane spellcaster that is native to the Dreamlands, I think, that uses spells based on dreaming. So they have their own unique spell list that goes up to level 6. Excuse me, because this is based on OSR or BX. So they have their own unique spell list. Some of these spells, the ones that are emboldened, in bold there, are typical magic user spells, and then they have their own unique spells, which all have to do with dreaming and illusions and stuff like that. It's really cool, actually. Their spell list is really interesting. I think this would be a really fun. This is actually, I think this is a cool character class for sure. This is something I would play. Just another type of magic user, and a very unique one, and very flavorful for the world, right? So it's going through all the different spells. I love this piece. This is another one of my favorite pieces in the book. This is just awesome. This, I guess, a Neuromancer, meditating or drifting off, and her weird, crazy psychedelic room. I love this kind of stuff. It brings me back looking at all those weird psychedelic magazines and stuff. I love her weird guitar thing and her cat hanging out with her, and you can see that she's got, looks like, some drugs and stuff hanging out here. This is just really cool stuff. I like this piece a lot. This is probably my favorite piece in the book. Again, overall, the art is beautiful and great. And then, of course, at the very back, we had the Appendix N, which I always appreciate when they put in their references. And I already knew the references. Like, I knew the inspiration the minute I saw the cover here. But there, if you don't, back in the back, it has a lot of their inspirations for the book. And that is going to be pretty much my overview of the Painted Wastelands. How long have we been going here? We've been going 30 minutes, actually. Okay, longer than I thought. I didn't want to make this too brief. And I'm kind of glad we didn't go too in depth here because it would have been too long of a video. But regardless, I think you guys can tell I really like this book. I give it, 2 thumbs up, 5 stars. Go check it out. I think it's probably, in my opinion, I think it's the most interesting OSR material I've seen come out of the OSR in quite a while. In at least, it's been a while since anything's grabbed my attention from the OSR in particular. As much as this. I think this is the most interesting and imaginative and original piece of work I've seen in a while. The other thing I like is that this hardback book is not, I don't think this is printed on demand. I think they had this made through some kind of publishing house. And I got to say, I didn't talk about the quality of the book itself. Like if you get the hardback book, and this is quite a nice book. I really am shocked and amazed and thankful for Tim and Chris sending me this. I really love it. I will be looking at this for years just for the art alone, and I will definitely be running this at some point in the future, and I can't recommend it enough if you are into weird, strange, psychedelic stuff. If you like heavy metal, you like Dune, you like Jodorowsky and David Lynch, and all that stuff that I loved, you're probably going to like it too, because this is right up your alley if you're into that kind of stuff, and are looking for just an interesting, or maybe you just looking for something different for your OSR games. I think this would definitely qualify, and it might just be good for inspiration. It's definitely inspired me to want a game. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Thanks a lot again, Tim and Chris, for reaching out and sending me this book. If you want your book reviewed, please, by all means. I don't charge anything for that, guys. These guys asked me if they, I don't charge anything to review somebody's book. If I want to review it, I'm going to review it. I only review stuff I like generally. I don't talk about negative stuff here on the channel. I'm a positive. I want to keep this stuff positive. So if I like something, I will talk about it. So if there's something you want to send me to review, and if I like it, I'll talk about it. If I don't like it, I probably won't say anything. So anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.